Boy, they got mad when I told them God didn't love everybody. You're just learning to grow is what you're doing. And you're starting to mature. We have to grow up. The church must grow up. What's going to cause it is trials. And he says, Christ suffered for us in the flesh. Arm yourselves likewise with the same mind. He gives us the example, and he says, by his stripes we were healed, but that's a part of the list of what he left us there in chapter 2 in verse 24. By our stripes, when we grow up and mature, by our stripes, when we're beaten and we're persecuted and we're go through trials, there's an elect family of God that will be healed by our words. And it will be our words, Christ resurrecting in us, and they will hear the gospel that we preach, and the non-elect will be offended and want to crucify us, and the elect will hear and they'll come alive. Christ worketh in us. Death worketh in us, but life in you. The 4th chapter of 2 Corinthians says, we die that you can come alive, dead elect. Then he says, arm yourself with the same mind, for he that hath suffered in the flesh. Let me put it this way. He that hath been put to death in the flesh hath been quickened by the Spirit and ceased from his sin. You don't cease from all your sin. You see where it says cease from sin? If we suffer in the flesh, it's the example that he left us in verse 18 of chapter 3. It's the example he left for us in verse 21 of chapter 2. It's what he's telling the Gentile strangers that they have to go through when he says, you're elected unto obedience in the sprinkling of blood through sanctification. You got to be sanctified. You got to die to self and be resurrected. You're elected to obedience and sprinkling of blood so you can come alive. Are y'all seeing this thing the way I'm seeing it? Without maturity, without growing up, God's not going to leave us babies. He will not do that. You know what he said? He said, I'll not leave you comfortless. I'll not leave you orphans. He's not going to leave us like a bunch of orphans out here that have no maturity and growing up. He's adopted us into his family, and he's going to cause us to grow up. Orphans sit in some home out here waiting to be adopted, and they grow and they never mature. They don't have a father and they don't have a mother, and their minds are all twisted and messed up. God said, I don't leave you that way. That is the word comfortless. He said, I will come to you. I'm not going to leave you as baby children that have no way of growing up. You're going to grow up. And then he goes into the things that it's going to take me some time. I've got several pages I've got to go through for verse 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Verse 3 is going to take me all night one night. And then after we go through these things and we grow up, he's saying to us, the maturity is going to come this way. Verse 12, chapter 4. Beloved, think it not strange concerning the fiery trial which is to try you. This is not a strange thing. Kenizo, X-E-N-I-Z-O, comes from the word X-E-N-O-S, kazinos, which is the word stranger. He says, the fiery trial is not an occasional guest. It's not a stranger to you. It's daily, because you have to die daily and you have to be maturing. Without the fire and without maturing, you don't belong to God. You say, but I'm awful young and I don't know how this thing works. It won't be you that does it. It'll be God doing it in you. He said, think it not strange concerning the fiery trial which is to try you. Parasmos. P-E-I-R-S-M-O-S. Parasmos. R-A-S-M-O-S. Comes from the word P-E-I-R-A-Z-O. Parazo means to pierce. Has the same meaning as S-K-O-R-P-I-O-S. Scorpion. Scorpions are what pierce us. And the scorpions are false teachers In Babylon was the scorpions that scattered Israel abroad. Babylonians scattered the flock. He says, think it not strange concerning the fiery trial which is to try you, as though some strange thing happened to you. This is not strange. This is something that has to happen in our lives to mature us. That's what he's trying to tell us. This whole book is about the maturing of the church. But rejoice inasmuch as you're partakers. The word rejoice is caro. It means to bid Godspeed or farewell, or means to have joy. Chara, C-H-A-R-A. Charis is the word grace. God has been gracious to you, causing you to rejoice, inasmuch as you're partakers of Christ's sufferings. Referring back to verse 12, this is what's going to mature us. That when his glory shall be revealed, ye shall be glad also with exceeding joy. His glory is going to be revealed in us, isn't it? While we're here. If ye be reproached, oniidzo, O-N-E-I-D-I-Z-O, O-N-E-I-D-I-Z-O, infamous. We can't be famous. We can't be popular in the world. We have to be infamous. If the world hated me, it'll hate you, Jesus said. You must be hated to be a believer. Boy, that's a hard word, isn't it? People go, what do you mean be hated? How can I be hated? Telling the truth. The only way the world will reproach you and hate you is if you're maturing. The world doesn't hate baby believers yet, do they? Not yet. Wait till you grow up and you get hungry for the truth and say, I'm going to stand for it. You may not undergo the things that I undergo, but you're going to have so much hatred in your life, and the world's going to come after you. They hated Jesus and they killed him for his words. And they'll come after us. I don't hear this message being preached. This is not a fun message. You have to really want Jesus to have Jesus. He says, if you be reproached and you're infamous for the name of Christ, happy, makurios, you're fortunate. The only way you can get to heaven is suffering for righteousness' sake. No other way to heaven. And if people don't believe that, and when people are looking at the camera, you don't have to believe this. This is what the Bible says. This is not the message of the churches throughout America today. It was the message of the Reformers. It was the message of the Puritans. It was the message of the church fathers in the 1st and 2nd and 3rd century. It was the message of Paul. It was the message of Jesus. It was the message of the prophets. If you be reproached for the name of Christ, happy are you, for the Spirit of God, of glory, and of God resteth upon you. On their part, he's evil spoken of, but on your part, Christ is glorified. And I'm out of time. This whole rest of this chapter is about if the righteous scarcely be saved down there in verse 18. Scarcely means with great difficulty. Our salvation, when we say the word saved, sozo, means to be taken from one point all the way to another point. That is our being sanctified and perfected and our maturing and our growing up as believers. But you're not going to get any maturity from these preachers. They're not going to tell you what these words mean. They don't even understand.